A few weeks ago, I was watching Andrew Holder's Twitch channel. He was talking about the metagame leading up for the January Winter Clash webcam event. Now, I hadn't really played at a competitive level since Nationals, but I had this brew floating around my head with the Jetburn cards, so I typed in his chat, "Hey Andrew, will I win this webcam event with Muscular?" And he laughed. He said, "I think Muscular is one of the bottom 5 characters in the game, and you know what? If you win the tournament with that character, I will donate $100 to the charity of your choice." And I said, "Okay, bet." Hey everyone, it's Mike over here at Angry Jellyfish Games. This past weekend, I got top 4 with my Muscular deck at the January 2024 official Winter Warm-Up Webcam Tournament. I'm going to go through the deck, going to go through my matches a little bit, talk about the whole experience. So here I am, playing Muscular. Round 1, I 2-0 a Mount Lady on the Void symbol. Round 2, I 2-0 Amajiki on Chaos. Round 3, I take a loss to Ryuku, piloted by Marvin from Undefeated at Locals. There's a lunch break, and I 2-0 my Butter Chicken. Round 4, 2-0 against Nejire. Round 5, I get the 1-0 against Mirio. Game 1 took 45 minutes. Game 2 did not quite get finished, so I got the round there. Round 6, 2-0 on stream against Shoto Todoroki 4. And round 7, I secured my place in Top Cuts by 2-0ing Hawks. Following day in Top Cuts, played against Mirio again, a different pilot this time, and I got it 2-0. And then I got knocked out of the tournament by Endeavor 3, piloted by Ryan the KO God. So, why did I play this deck, and what was in it? So, this is my deck list. Now, when a new format drops, my deck building process usually starts with looking for interesting or powerful 2-card combos, interactions that I think I can build around. Interactions that I wanted to focus on were Muscular with number 23 Pro Hero, which says that as long as there are 3 or more counters on your character, all of your attacks get a speed. And Muscular with Zero Gravity Rush, which lets you scale speed directly with your damage, and draws extra cards, which is great in a 5-hander. From there, what I try to do when I'm deck building is look at what my character is doing well and try to maximize that, and then look at where their shortcomings are and see if I can mitigate those. Now, Muscular has a lot of shortcomings. Really, he doesn't do much of anything turn 1. His first ability requires either you to be dealing damage or your opponent to be punching you in the face before you can get any counters and build up damage on your attacks. And his response requires you to block an attack and then take one to the face, which your opponent's going to have some agency over, and you can't really afford to take 8 damage moves to the face that often. You start with the highest health pool in the game at 36, but that's going to disappear pretty quickly if you're not careful about it. Muscular's strength is in his late game. For every attack that you hit with, and for every attack that hits you, you get a counter, which is going to translate to +1 damage to all of your attacks forever. There's no limit to that. As long as you can keep taking hits or dealing damage and the game doesn't end, your damage goes up. So from there, if we can get these counters, we have to actually push attacks through. So we need speed. So Jetburn brought another card to us on the Earth symbol in Quick Response. This can give all of our attacks another +2 speed at the cost of a foundation, as long as most, if not all, of our attacks are high. From there, I started looking at the attack package. We also got Falling Skies in addition to Zero Gravity Rush. This is a perfect attack for Muscular in this deck. So this is going to be another high attack, so we can pump speed onto it with Quick Response. It's also going to be very fast and very big on its own at the end of a string, but it also has this alternate mode of giving itself throw. Now, Muscular can't buff throws, and Falling Skies can only give itself throw as a first enhance, so you can't have both. But in that early game, when you're trying to build up muscle counters on your character, you can send this out as your only attack for the turn, give it throw, get yourself that guaranteed muscle, and then move on. And when you do that, this goes into momentum, and we have a couple ways to pick it up out of there later on a future turn when we're trying to string together a kill. Titancliff is really good at mitigating the weaknesses that we have as a 5-hander. Now that 6 difficulty on the top can be a little daunting, but we have to think of this as a pseudo 5 diff because it's going to let us build in a 6 check from our discard pile when we play it. On top of that, it lets us sculpt our hand by discarding 3 cards and then drawing 3. So if we draw this as our only attack at the start of a turn, we can potentially draw 3 more attacks. With Titancliff, we want to add a lot more 6 checks to our deck to build in. So number 23 Pro Hero is the obvious one, where you've maxed out on those at 4 copies. But we also get Ultra Regeneration, which I'm playing out of 2 of. It rewards us when we take an unblocked attack from our opponent, which we want to do as Muscular. Another 6 check card I added in there is number 10 Pro Hero. This is just a good block. It's a cheap foundation to let us build early on, and if we really need to, we can build it in with Titancliff. I played 1 copy of Muscle Mauler, mostly for the Deadlock Enhance. One of the best strategies against Muscular is to go into Deadlock, build 15-20 foundations, and then a 5-hander can only draw so many attacks, and if they aren't fast enough, you can just block all of them. Muscle Mauler is a Deadlock Enhance on your attack, so it's not something that your opponent can see ahead of time. It's going to come down, flip their 2 best foundations, and it's also going to let us draw an extra card on our attack turn, and more importantly, pick up a momentum. So if we had a very early Falling Skies play, now I can pick that up and have it for the end of a string. I also wanted to find a lot of high attacks with a good base speed, so even if I don't have my own speed pump out, I can play these early and make it difficult for my opponent to block, or when I'm in my late game and I'm pumping damage on everything and getting everything plus 2 or 3 speed, these are just going to compound with that and get lethal very fast. So I found Dragon Dive, which is another great block. It's a 1 high, and it's just a base 6 speed. That's fantastic. High Engine Kick is in a similar category. It's base 4 speed, but you always get to cycle a card out of your hand and draw a new one to give it either plus 2 or plus 4. This is a great attack for your early turns, because if you draw a bunch of attacks when you want to be on a build turn, you can cycle an attack with this, hope to draw a foundation. Now, since I'm on 4 High Engine Kick and 2 Titancliff, about 10% of my deck is cards that let me discard things. So I put in 2 copies of Any Means Necessary. I kind of think of this as an action card. You really never want to play this as a foundation, and you can basically never block with it. But if you discard it during the enhanced step, you draw an extra card. So sometimes on those early turns, you throw out your High Engine Kick, discard this, and draw 2. You're basically a 6-hander. The other attack I added that wasn't a high was Hardened Jab. Now, our response on Muscular lets us build in cards that we blocked with if we just take damage from future attacks. This lets you hide attacks in your stage, so you can block with your 1 mid block, take partial damage from an attack, get a muscle counter, tank the next attack, build that attack in face down, and now on your kill turn, you play Jab. Look at that. You have a face down attack in your stage, you pick that up, that's going to extend your string out. Rounding out the attack package, we have BMI Buster. Now, a lot of people asked me why I played this card, and it's because they were looking at the enhance on it, where you have to already have 2 momentum to draw 2 and build 2, and this deck doesn't actually get early momentum very often. But that's not why this card is here. I'm playing this only for the response. If this is my first attack, then now it's in my card pool and I have access to this response to cancel any action. The scariest card to play against with this deck is Barrier Shield. There were 15 copies of Barrier Shield in the top 8. That card is nuts. If my opponent zeroes out my speed and hits me with a break or 2, that's going to end my turn. I have another copy on the board, so I can go up to 3 if I see a Barrier Shield, or just if my opponent is on Barrier Shield symbols. But this card also got boarded out quite a bit if I didn't see any action cards for my opponent. Let's move on to Foundations. Heroic Endurance was the other star of the deck. This lets you commit it to give an attack -2 damage, and if you're really worried, you can remove it to give it another -2 damage. You really want to be taking unblocked attacks to the face, so that you can get muscle counters and build an extra foundations with your response on Muscular. This is going to make it so that those attacks coming at you are hitting you for 4, 3, sometimes less damage. That means that your opponent has to be playing a ton more attacks into you, because the ones that are actually getting through are for a lot less than they expected. We get to complement Heroic Endurance with another foundation from set 6, Warm and Bubbly. This is going to do the same effect, give an attack -2 damage, but as a flip cost and only if you've already taken damage. However, it's a 0 diff, so you can just kind of spam them out there. I played 4 copies of Pump Up. This is one of the best cards available to Muscular. It lets you gain muscle counters even if your attacks aren't getting through. This lets you be a little more proactive, lets you just throw an attack out there without really worrying if it's going to be blocked or not. And also, it lets you flip foundations to say that if your attack is blocked, you can seal a rival foundation. This is pretty important on your kill turns because you're usually going to be late in the game and your rival's going to have access to a lot of stuff. If they have any hard resets in their stage or anything that's going to really disrupt your attacks, then you can use the flip on this, seal whatever the issue is, and keep going with your attack string. I'm playing 2 Prehensile Tail. This is an incredible deadlock threat because it lets you give an attack throw after you've pumped it with Muscular. But most of the time what this is doing is the flip effect to let you pick up a momentum and get one of those attacks back to extend out a string. Now there were a couple of foundations I just ran as a one of just to either try out or because I didn't want to see it that often. The first is Snack Time. With the Enhance, as a 5-hander you don't usually have a lot of cards to discard to this, but every once in a while, if your opponent is very low on foundations and you have a little bit of extra card advantage, you can use this to lock down some of their more important responses that they have in stage. And of course, it has the deadlock enhance of drawing an extra card now and then. I'm playing 1 Facing Danger, mostly for the enhance. This lets me reset an attack's damage to 5, so if someone comes at me with 10 speed for 10, like Mirio's did a couple times, then I can just reset that damage, and then I can even keep getting it lower with a Warm and Bubbly or my Heroic Endurance after I set it to 5. And finally, 1 copy of Defending Pageant Queen. To be totally honest, I needed a high block, and I looked in my binder and I had 1 copy of this, so I threw it in there. Out of the sideboard, I had 2 copies of You're So Obvious, again, mostly just using it for the damage reset. If I ran this deck again, I would probably turn these into just 2 more copies of Facing Danger. I think having the 5 check is a little bit better, and I almost never needed to reset speed of an attack. 2 copies of Faith Shield on the board, basically just for Mirio. Every once in a while you'll see a deck where you care about throws, but this is just a useful card to have right now. I played 3 Learning the Standards. This is just a great defensive tool for people who are trying to string you out really early in the game just to mess with their progressive difficulty a little bit. And finally, Villainous Teamwork is a card that caught a lot of people by surprise this weekend. This is just straight up destroy an asset. A bunch of people are playing Twisty Surroundings right now, which is annoying not just for the -2 to the check, but also because if they change the zone of your attacks to mid or low, you can't use Quick Response anymore. You can also board this in if you see your opponent has an Airy, which is another damage reset that you care about, or Training Weights, which can give enough damage to get through some of your damage reduction. So, next time I play this deck, what would I do different? Well, I don't really ever want to play this deck again. I think that I proved my point. I took this character that everyone kind of wrote off and brought him back and made a top cut. I think that's what's really cool about this game is that you can build these, off-the-wall decks and still find that success. However, I think that this deck had a huge problem with the number 1 opponent of webcam events, and that's the clock. Looking back at my Swiss rounds, only one of these matches went to 3 games, and that's the one I lost. Most of them went to overtime or ended in turns or wouldn't have really had time for a 3rd game anyway. This deck is pretty slow. It wants you to play a lot of turns, and especially on webcam events, that's not always conducive to winning. If any of those game 1s didn't go my way, the match would have ended in a draw instead of a win, and I wouldn't have made top cuts. That said, if I was to play this deck again tomorrow, here's what I would do. I would try to run a 2nd Muscle Mauler, a 3rd Titan Cliff, a 4th Falling Skies, and a 3rd Hardened Jab. To make room for that, I would cut these Ignited Arrows. They underperformed basically the whole time. And then I would probably trim 1 Dragon Dive. I think of those additions, the least important one is the 4th Falling Skies. I think 3 is okay, and honestly, if you don't have the money for the 4th copy, don't get the 4th copy. For my foundations and my sideboard, I want to cut this Defending Pageant Queen. I want to move the Facing Danger to the sideboard. I want to bring 1 of these Learning the Standards into the main deck, and turn both of these You're So Obvious into Facing Danger copies 2 and 3. I think the resets are great, but you don't need them every match, so I want to keep them in the sideboard, and when I have them, I like that they have the extra line of text with the stun hate, and I like the 5 check more than I like the low block on You're So Obvious. Now to end on a lighter note, minutes after I was defeated in the semifinals, I got a DM from Andrew Holder, who basically said, hey, you didn't win, but top 4 is pretty good, so tell me a charity, and I'm going to throw some money at it. And I said, yeah, cool. I found a charity, and I said I would match whatever he was willing to donate. Both Andrew and I donated $50 each to the New Light Theater. They're a group local to me in Delaware that does great work to bring opportunities to young artists in the community into the world of theater. And they partner with a different organization for each show they put on, helping the community in Wilmington as a whole. They're fantastic. And finally, some channel business. Putting together this deck tech video was probably the most fun I've had with any of the videos I've made so far, so I think I'm probably going to stick to a format like this after getting some feedback from all of you. The next event I think I'm playing in, the next big event, will be the Webcam Regional on March 15th and 16th, I want to say. I don't know what I'm going to play yet, because we don't know what's going to be legal. It's going to be standard, my first standard event, I assume a lot of people's first standard event, with the new Yu Yu Hakusho set. So, when it comes out, I'm going to start brewing. Until then, peace.